Santino Ferrucci. It's Stars and Stripes goes right to P4. Ferrucci's on the hunt with the three Penske's leading.
Further back, I think the blue and orange car of Scott Dixon.
Crash!
Oh, we got a crash at the back.
That's Marcus Ericsson. Around goes Pietro Fittipaldi.
And I believe is that Catherine
Tom
66?
Lundquist, the Meyershank Racing rookie. There's Ericsson, car destroyed, banging the steering wheel. His Indy 500 probably over.
We are going racing. Scott McLaughlin and the Pennzoil Chevy at the front of the field. There's moves happening. There's passes being made. Callum Eilot's in trouble. He's being swapped. It's Kyle Larson, and there's contact with Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Hunter-Reay with the hip check to Larson. Something went horribly wrong for Kyle Larson on the restart.
Look at the front too. Oh, there's somebody going from the fringe of the grass.
I think it's Kirkwood.
Kyle Kirkwood, and around the outside goes Colton Herter. The Cambridge Honda sweeps around the outside of the championship leader, Alex Palou.
Oh, and we've got more trouble. Catherine Legg.
Catherine Legg, the only... So it's Stingray Rob for AJ Foyt Racing, who is going to bring this field back to green. Connor Daly is the second car. Then Christian Lundgaard in the Hy-V Honda. Look out as they all go into turn one. Ferrucci around the outside. He rounds up Will Power in that Verizon Chevy. Look at the Stars and Stripes, center of your screen. Ferrucci's on the move.
Great move from Felix on board now with Pato O'Ward. That's Palou in front, and Linus Lundqvist in the wall. The caution is out.
It's another rookie. Connor Daly, Indiana zone, leads this field back to green for Dreyer Reinbold Cusick Motorsport, but Stingray Rob comes, and here comes McLaughlin and Santino Ferrucci, the yellow submarine to the front.
Stingray Rob, actually. The two cars look similar. Look at Herta making a move on Newgard really late into turn one.
Strategist, there's a caution on the track.
Caution's out. What's it for? Oh, it's Felix Rosenqvist. It's another Honda. Back at Indy. Back under racing. Ferrucci's pulled out.
Here we go. 4 wide again on the front stretch. Up front. Daly Rob, but Scott McLaughlin says, this is my corner.
And how cool is this to see? Oh no, a big crash, and it's Colton Herter. Herter and the Cambridge Honda is out. Here we go, back racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Rinus VeeKay is at the front of the field. He's on a different strategy. And around goes Christian Lundgaard, sweeping right around in the Hy-V Honda. But look at Joseph Newgarden.
How about
that yellow and red machine?
Yellow.
Drop of
Caution
the green.
again. Oh, it's Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Broken steering arm on the right or the left front.
And it's the defending winner who will bring this field to green, Joseph Newgarden and Scott McLaughlin. They're side by side over the yard of bricks, heading into turn one. And it's going to be the yellow submarine that takes the lead on the restart. McLaughlin back to the front.
Ferrucci on the outside of Rossi as well. We got cars high. We got a spin.
Andretti, Marco Andretti.
Oh,
just
Andretti
clips the
global.
Let's go. Green flag flies here in Indy.
Brilliant jump for Scotty Mack. Watch those two lime green cars. They've been going at it. Rasmussen and Canapino.
Larson on the inside of Palou. And Palou is forced up high. Here comes Kyle Larson. Here comes Augustine Canapino.
Oh, big lockup from Kyle Larson way past the cone there. This will be tight. Johnson to make it one more time. And there you go. Kyle Larson does indeed get a penalty. You heard Brian Campy say it. He will have to come down pit road, and that's one of the things that he was worried about is how he would handle pit road. He's going to have to do a drive-through for speeding, Kevin.
Look at this, look at this. It's a drag race, but the power and the advantage is going to go to Rossi. Rossi has got McLaughlin. Palou gets by Ferrucci. It's Rasmussen and Newgarden. Wow! Did his chances today. He's just gone a lap down as Dixon goes by. Pato O'Ward, is that the pass for the lead and the win?
Guys, Scott Dixon has so much gas. Oh, yellow out.
Big one for Will Power. It's over for the Verizon Chevy. Dixon will lead Pato O'Ward and teammate inside and Rossi on the outside.
3 into 1 doesn't work. Dixon falls, but 3 behind him. Joseph Newgarden up high around VK and Palou. We got a car up high, but keeps it out of the wall. But we do see cars starting to peel off. Newgarden, McLaughlin, and I believe that's Connor Daly coming in.
Dixon and O'Ward, there they are in the short shoot. This is the battle for the win of the Indy 500.
Watch over here, coming out, Dixon, but the others are at speed.
Rossi gets a little bit of a toe off O'Ward. Both him and Newgarden now going side by side. Newgarden uses the pick on the outside. Dixon getting up to speed. Joseph has momentum. Will he get him on the front straight?
Newgarden has a ton of momentum. Dixon still trying to accelerate. They'll catch each other at the end of the front stretch.
Both of these men are Indianapolis 500 winners, but here comes Newgarden, blasting up the inside of Dixon. The Indianapolis 500, maybe that time is now. With one more lap to go, Pato goes to the lead.
He's not going to lift this time. He did it against Ericsson and lost part of O'Ward to the front off of turn 2.
O'Ward tries to break the draft. Newgarden's like, I've been in this situation before. Joseph Newgarden around the outside of Pato. This is mind-blowing. Joseph Newgarden had to wait 12 times to win it, and now he's going to do it back-to-back. Joseph Newgarden is a 2-time Indy 500 winner. Oh, my goodness.
This is the Outlap F1 podcast featuring America's own Cody, Andy, and Deanna. Your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. Join us on the Outlap. All right, welcome back in. We've put our Monaco GP to bed, and it is now time for... And if the late, great Brent Musburger was still around... Oh, wait, I don't want to kill him. I don't know if he's dead or not. But he may have just have retired. I don't want to kill anybody pre-do that. But if he was around, the next line that you would have heard is, "You are looking live at the pagoda at the famous Indianapolis Motor Speedway." It's the Indy 500. It was the 108th edition of that race. Woo! Few things that I had going into this. We talked about kind of where the setup was. First of all, we had the lovely rain delay. Because the cell that moved through the Chicago area went straight east and then affected right as Monaco was ending. It actually got pretty dark around here, and that weather ended up going over the skies of Indianapolis. So, they had and it was a gully washer here, so I can only imagine how much water actually came down over there. So they did not even get a chance to really start the drying process until almost 2 hours after scheduled time. So they didn't actually get running until it was about 4:30 Eastern. But once they did, it was manic. We've seen some Indy 500s that kind of take a while. They're a bit of a slow burn, and then they can kind of get crazy at the end. No one was minding their P's and Q's early. There were lots of incidents early. Tom Blomqvist on even the first green flag lap taps Pietro Fittipaldi. And hard luck character Marcus Ericsson, who just, I think, wants to be done with Indy, and he's out of the race. That was a early theme, a lot of attrition early, especially if you had a Honda engine. I mean, we talked last week about the Chevys having the issue in qualifying trim. Well, the Hondas were the ones seeming to having the issue in race trim. Who was it? Felix Rosenquist's engine blew up. Catherine Legg's engine blew up. And a few others, and then there were some others just spins. Linus Lundqvist spun on his own, hit the wall. Colton Herta spun and hit the wall. Lots of attrition early. But Cody, what were your thoughts, especially in the early going?
Yeah, early going, it did seem like it was going to be a race of attrition with how many people were getting knocked out in the beginning there. Do feel bad for Marcus Ericsson as the 2022 winner and the runner-up, like almost getting the back-to-back last year. We know that he can perform very well here at Indy, and this year did not look so good for him. He, made it in on last chance qualifying, so not off to a great start there, and then doesn't even get through one lap at the race. Gets caught up in that incident. So, really, really poor luck for Marcus Ericsson. As you said, with the Honda engines, it did kind of seem like a scare there in the early parts of the race when all of the engine-related retirements were Honda engines. So, and there's some drivers up there at top teams that run Hondas. I believe Chip Ganassi runs Honda engines, right? So any of those top contenders would have been sweating a little bit. It did. The attrition lightened a little bit getting into the middle of the race, but we did have some spins from very accomplished drivers for IndyCar. We got Will Power had a spin, pretty much looked like he just lost the car all on his own, which any can happen to anyone. It's hard to keep control of the car there. We had this Indy race occurring at a time of day that it does not normally occur at. I believe they said it was the latest start time for an Indy 500 ever. So that's going to play into track conditions and grip levels and, coming off line here in Indy when you're going, 220, 230 miles an hour. You can lose the car just like that. And it looks like that's what happened to Will Power. Gave the wall a pretty good smash. Colton Herta lost it as well. When he had his incident, it looked like only the front wing and nose cone were damaged. And there was a lot of, even the commentators were kind of leaning into this, that thought he could actually continue the race. And he did end up continuing the race, but only after I think about 17 laps had passed. I guess he wasn't sure of the car's condition. They did bring it back to the garage and gave it a look over and decided that it was safe to bring it back out on track, which ended up being worthwhile to him. By being out on track, even though he was 17 laps down and not in it for really gaining any positions through conventional means, and definitely not in it for the win, I do believe he was able to gain a few positions just because other cars lost to attrition, and he completed more laps in the race than they did. So he did gain a few points just doing that, which I got to commend his resolve to go back out there knowing that it was only for a handful of points and not for the victory.
Yeah, I mean, he's in a position of championship contention. He was leading the points after one of the rounds this year. So, he ultimately comes home in P23. So your non-finishers, your ones involved in incidents were Herta in P23, P24 Will Power, P25 Marco Andretti, P26 Ryan Hunter Ray, P27 Felix Rosenquist, P28 Linus Lundqvist, P29 Catherine Legg, P30 was Marcus Armstrong, P31 Tom Blomqvist, P32 Pietro Fittipaldi, and P33 was Marcus Ericsson. Literally 6 seconds on the track before the lap 1 incident occurred. But yeah, I mean, when you kind of got through the attrition, we did actually end up with probably the best type of scenario that you can kind of get is we have some yellow that enables some different strategies to come to the front. There were a number of cars who were off strategy early or they short pitted during a stint and then they were off strategy late. Those were, I think it was Stingray Robb, Graham Rahal, and at certain
Kyle
points,
Larson
Kyle Larson at one point had to do that. This race was also pretty democratic, and you would also see, some guys who even from the back would come up and have stints at the front and turns at the front, and it was just kind of trying to see kind of how it would all play out. Themes early in terms, so let's just talk about Kyle Larson. He had probably a bit of a Indy 500 baptism, if you kind of were.
Yeah, that was a good way to put it.
Everyone was kind of wondering when a mistake would happen, and he did have a significant one. He overcooks the tires coming into the pit box. That results in a speeding penalty, which is a drive-through, which put him definitely on the back foot. But he was able, with one of the late yellows, to get back onto the lead lap and finished fairly decently. P18 is respectable for the first time, and he actually did win the Rookie of the Year award for the Indy 500. It's not necessarily given to who finishes the highest up. It's not, that's not how that works. It's who kind of presents and does well throughout the course of the month. And other than that one little hiccup, I thought Kyle Larson didn't put a foot wrong for most of this month. He's keen to come back. I think it's a 2-year deal, so he will be back next year. That was fun to watch.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Kyle Larson's race here in Indy. I do commend him for because we saw that the rain delay was occurring. I wasn't really sure until I looked it up online exactly what he was going to do about that, because he was going to do the doubleheader between Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. And he's a NASCAR guy. That's where he does his full-time racing. That's where he has a championship. It's been very successful. But he decided, I guess beforehand, that he was going to stick around at Indy, even with the delay, and that if that interfered with the Coke 600, so be it. Based on NASCAR's current rules, where you get into the NASCAR postseason by having a win, and I think being in like the top 10 of people with wins at that point in the season, you get into the postseason championship run, whatever you want to call it. And he's already there, so he could afford to miss this race. But yeah, he stuck it out in Indy based on where he qualified. I mean, he could have potentially been an Indy 500 Rookie of the Year just based on that, being on the second row. But he was having a really good race. And I don't know how serious he was contending to win, but he was at least there in the mix for better part of the race. And yeah, it was just that speeding in the pit lane from locking up the tires that really did him in, because that is a drive-through penalty, and that pretty much screwed him up for the rest of the race. And he was trying to do off-sequence strategies, which led to him actually leading quite a few laps, getting into the later stages of the race, which was kind of cool to see, even though you knew that as soon as he pitted, he wasn't really going to be in the mix anymore. But yeah, I think he can be happy with what he achieved. He, he's learned a few of the oddities that go with racing at Indy, and I'm hoping that when he comes back next year, he'll take what he's learned and put in a real gun for the win.
Yeah, and he definitely seems to have the equipment for it. I would say as we get further up the grid, you're going to see kind of a theme here between the Penske's and the Arrow McLarens going at it, especially at the end. One of the big stories early, I thought Scott McLaughlin looked very, very strong early, setting the early pace. He seemed very comfortable being out front. He just kind of turned out to be kind of a strategy thing where his just pit cycle was just a little bit off of what ended up being the leading group. So he kind of found himself at the tail end of that leading group, and he didn't have enough time to come back through. So he ended up finishing P6 on the day. But let's kind of fast forward a little bit to the last, you get to lap 150, and then it's pretty much go time. And, everybody, the shadow boxing ends and the politeness ends and the fuel saving ends. And we just end up kind of going for it. With that, we still had one more pit stop to go. One of the, I thought, strategy calls of the race was actually done by the Arrow McLarens with Pato O'Ward, who had been, for the most part, kind of struggling in the midfield kind of a bit. He had fallen at one point. He was all the way down, I think, in 19th after a bad pit stop. He had rallied. He would get back up to like P7, P8, and then something else would happen. They short pitted him. And that turned out to be a really good strategy because that got him into that leading group. And then when the last yellow fell, he was able to take that stop with everybody else. That put him back on the same strategy with the guys like Dixon and Newgarden and Rossi, and put him back up into that leading group. So that was an interesting thing. I thought one guy who overcame a ton throughout this race was Callum Ilott. The race hadn't even started, and he was in the pits. He lost his starting position, which I think was 15th, had to go all the way to the back. He ultimately comes home in P11, so a heck of a rally and a good job there. Highest finishing rookie, Christian Rasmussen in P12. Thought he showed always pretty good as well. A lot of good stories, in terms of going up and down the grid. But anyway, let's kind of just, I guess, go right into the meat of the thing. The last 10 to 15 laps was just this absolute ding dong between, you had the Arrow McLarens at the front with Pato O'Ward, Alex Rossi, and don't ever count Scott Dixon out of an IndyCar race. It didn't matter that he didn't have a great month of May. It didn't matter that he didn't qualify real well. It didn't matter that he had a Honda engine that could have expired on him at any minute. All of a sudden, the end of the race is there he was. And that's just what he does. It's just amazing. That dude is amazing to watch. But you ended up with Newgarden, O'Ward, Dixon, and Rossi all going at it at the end. Cody, I'll let you kind of take the play-by-play of the last couple laps. What'd you see? I have thoughts on it as well. That last lap is going to go into the history books, I think, for a while.
Mm-hmm. So, as you kind of discussed before, Scott McLaughlin, who had been dominating, I won't say dominating, but had been very strong in the earlier parts of the race. I think he ended up getting the most laps led during the race. He kind of sequenced back to the back of the leaders. Santino Ferrucci had also been running pretty high up for a lot of the race, and he cycled back a little farther. So when it came down to those last few laps, it was Penske's of Joseph Newgarden. I think he was pretty much the only Penske that was really up there because, let's see here, Will Power's out of the
not
race.
until McLaughlin at P6.
McLaughlin's back. So you got Joseph Newgarden, you've got the McLarens, you got Pato, or you got Alexander Rossi, who Alexander Rossi had been performing very well throughout the entire race. Had been pretty much running near the front all day. And then you got, as you said, Scott Dixon, who had worked his way up sneakily through the field, as he always does. I have a bit of a soft spot for Scott Dixon because he did win the Indy race that you and I went and saw on Belle Isle in Michigan a bunch of years ago. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for him for that. But these guys were really pretty much on a level playing field going into those last few laps. They were jockeying for a position. You had a period of time where Alexander Rossi was trading the lead with Joseph Newgarden, and then he ended up losing position to Pato O'Ward and later on Scott Dixon, and then you got Pato O'Ward trading the lead with Joseph Newgarden. It was going back and forth between really those top four guys leading up to the end, and then you get down to 2 laps to go. It kind of looked at that point like, Joseph Newgarden and Pato O'Ward were the favorites. They were pulling out ahead. Scott Dixon and Alexander Rossi just looked like they were just a little too far back to make a strong enough run for the lead. And you're going down the backstretch on the penultimate lap, and Pato O'Ward's making a good run on Joseph Newgarden for the lead, and he lets up. He decides to not try to take the position going into turn 3. My assumption is that he just figured if he took the position at that point, it was going to be too early. Joseph Newgarden was going to get a good draft and was going to take the position back. So he waited, and he ends up taking the lead from Joseph Newgarden once they started the final lap and we're going into turn 1. And the crowd goes nuts because Pato O'Ward is a very, very popular young driver in IndyCar. He has been very successful over the years. He's had a couple. Last year, he had a great stab at winning the Indy 500. Was running right up at the end and just had a spin that took him out of the race, unfortunately. But looked like this could have been redemption. He takes the lead going into turn one, and then going down the back stretch, he does they call it like a snaking maneuver. So drafting plays a pretty big part in IndyCar at these high speed oval tracks where you're in the airflow of the car in front of you. You have reduced drag on your car. It helps you to get increased speed and a good run on the car in front of you. And what the lead car will do in the draft is they'll do this snaking maneuver where they move from the high side of the track to the low side of the track and back, sometimes quite rapidly, in order to break that draft and try to keep the car behind from getting a good run on them. You see it a lot over these last few years, especially near the end of the Indy 500. And Pato O'Ward tries to do that, but maybe it's hard to say what would have been different. But he did that snaking maneuver pretty aggressively. And Joseph Newgarden didn't really try to follow his path as strongly like you normally would see with this maneuver. It looks kind of goofy almost. You see a whole bunch of these cars following each other in this big snake. And he ends up getting a pretty good run on Pato O'Ward anyway, coming to the end of the backstretch. And Pato O'Ward, to his credit, he races Joseph really cleanly. You were kind of telling me before, part of it was maybe his entrance into turn three, not, maybe being a little too acute. He couldn't really carry as much speed into that as he would have wanted to. But regardless, he covers the inside. Joseph Newgarden has to go around the outside, which is the rougher way to go. But he's carrying enough speed to make it happen. He gets into the lead going into turn three, carries it through turn four, and manages to get the back-to-back victory, which was really awesome to see. He was incredibly excited. He repeated his celebration from last year, where he went through the fence and into the grandstands to celebrate with the fans for a minute, which I think is a really exciting, awesome way to celebrate. And he got a really good bonus out of that, because apparently someone had set up a $440,000 bonus if you were able to get a back-to-back Indy victory. So that was a nice chunk of change added to his, I think over $4 million portion of the prize purse that Joseph Newgarden got. So that the last couple laps were extremely exciting, not knowing really who was going to win, if they were going to wreck each other, and if, something like, Scott Dixon was sitting pretty there in third place in case Joseph Newgarden and Pato O'Ward wrecked each other. But was not to be. It was good, clean racing. And, what I liked was that it was really exciting, and it was green flag throughout the end of the race there. You didn't have any wrenches thrown in from a caution like we did last year, where you pretty much had one lap to go, where everyone was all bunched back together. No, this was really close and really exciting without that. It was just green flag running there at the end. And I was pretty much on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I mean, you really couldn't have asked for probably a better finish had you teed it up any better, really. I mean, just the way that the arrow works, you see a lot of what I would call the ding dong back and forth, especially at the front. And you really kind of had to figure out where you wanted to make your move. Now, in maybe the last couple of years, the winning move has always been turn one of the last lap. Turn 3 and 4, it's generally it's accepted that it's a lot harder to pull that move off, because you really have to have a run going into there. And, and as you pointed out, O'Ward is doing the snake move. And I thought if there was one thing I would have wanted to have seen him do, was to finish the snake move and make it so that his car is back really on the ideal racing line going into 3, to really force a decision from Newgarden as to whether or not he wanted to hang that out on the outside. O'Ward instead takes a very, like I was telling you earlier, a very acute angle into it. The back end of his car kind of washes out a little bit, and he slides up you can see as Newgarden is completing the pass, Award is sliding up behind him. So I don't know if he had to get out of the throttle. I wasn't really watching the onboards at that point. I was just standing and trying to cheer as much as I could. So I wasn't, doing it for analysis at that point. I was just kind of caught up in the moment. So, and unfortunately, you can't go back and redo the onboards like you can with the F1 stuff. So, yeah, so I didn't get a chance to see that for sure. But I mean, that's what I saw, at least on the live part of it. But I mean, the fact is, Award made it as hard of a decision for Newgarden as he could have. He laid it all out. I don't think he backed off. I can't imagine why he would have there. But yeah, I mean, just that's all you want in a race, man. I mean, you really couldn't have asked for a whole lot better. I thought these guys put on a great show. All 33 of them should be really proud. And IndyCar needed a good event, a great event to kind of get the fans back and set up the rest of this season. Pato O'Ward's got nothing, is gonna take a win at this place at some point. He's too damn good not to. Mm-hmm. You saw the agony and the ecstasy in the same moment. You got Newgarden in the stands, pumped up and jacked up, and you got Award. Like I've watched I've got McLaren social media all over, everybody I follow. So, he was just absolutely gutted at the end of that thing. But that dude should hold his head high. It was great strategy to get him there when it wasn't necessarily going to be in the cards. I can't really be disappointed with Alex Rossi coming home in P4 because, I thought they were both very candid after the race where Rossi said, you know what, I want to be more angry about this, but I can't be. I can't look back at it and say, what did we do wrong? I thought we did everything right, and it just wasn't in the cards. And the Arrow McLarens and the Penske's throughout the course of the month were the two strongest cars. But that Penske power unit and Penske everything had that just a little bit more in it. And it was that little bit at the end. And I kept thinking, you can overcome a blip, but that's that little blip at the end. So I tip my cap to Joseph Newgarden. I hope this really does mean, at least for IndyCar overall, that, we can stop talking about the whole thing that happened in St. Pete. It's over with. It's done with. Consequences have been handed out. The penalties are done. Let's enjoy what is going to be a really good, fun rest of this IndyCar season. The championship is now wide open because Colton Herta did not have a great race. Pato O'Ward's championship is kind of back on after a rough couple of races after the first. Actually, he inherited the win in St. Pete. So, there's a lot of good to look forward to. But yeah, I mean, these guys put on a hell of a show. I enjoyed this race thoroughly. I can't wait. I'm seriously going to look at tickets for next year because this is too fun not to do.
I'm telling you, I will go with you. I actually learned through some chit chatting that apparently my fiance's grandfather has been to the Indy 500 several times. We were talking a little bit about it after the race yesterday, and he was telling me that he went to a race. I figured it must have had to be in the 70s because he was telling me who won. It's going to drive me crazy because it just left my noggin. But he was telling me about how like AJ Foyt was racing, and the guy who won is like a 3-time winner. And yeah, it's just like I was very envious. So it got the spirit going even harder to want to go to Indy. So I will definitely go with you if you want to go.
I am down. I'm going to start doing my prelim investigations now as to try to get the best tickets that I can. Because it's just, doing it just at the road course is kind of the appetizer. And now that I'm comfortable with how to get in and out of there, yeah, there's no reason not to do it. So it's a bucket list thing. It's been a bucket list thing. And we'll bring all sorts of pictures and we'll do our thing as best we can. Maybe we'll go down for a few days. I would love to, if we could, I would love it to be where we could do like the Friday, the carb day, and then the weekend, that whole race weekend. But, we'll see. We'll figure that out. But yeah, stay tuned, Outlap F1 Nation. We may be doing some live stuff at the Indy 500 next year. So who knows where that will go. But yeah, that was a whole lot of fun. But awesome weekend of motorsport throughout it. I think the only ones who weren't running were the endurance people, but their big event is coming up. The 24 Hours of Le Mans is not that far away, so we'll get all moving for that. In terms of the F1 circus, the F1 circus moves on to Canada within the next 2 weeks' time. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do the preview. I am headed to the Northwoods of Wisconsin next week. We may do it where we do the preview where I'm in the cabin again. We'll have to see if the internet's working, if we can do that. I will be back for the review on that Sunday for sure. But yeah, we will work all that out. But Coney, before we head on out, any final thoughts? Indy 500, Monaco, whatever.
Just that. I mean, I got to be frank with you this time. I'm a Formula One fan at heart. I think for entertainment value, Indy took the win over Monaco this weekend for sure. Really, really happy that Leclerc won it. I mean, that was the feel good. But if in terms of the entertainment factor, it was total blowout to the Indy race. I stuck around. I watched the whole thing, start to finish. Excited pretty much throughout, and if I had to pick between the two to go to for the entertainment factor, would have to be Indy. For the glitz and glam, I think Monaco, if I could ever possibly afford it. But I really enjoyed both, and I'm hoping that when we get to Canada, if we get back to being able to make some goddamn overtakes and get an exciting one.
Yeah, I could pretty much. I'll predict it now. I'm sure we're going to have overtaking in Canada. May not be a ton, but we'll definitely get some.
More than the 5 in Monaco, I hope.
I'm confident. I think we're going to get more than that. We'll at least for sure see pit stops. I can guarantee that one. But we will be back. We're going to take a week off. We'll be back within about 10 days or so for a Canadian GP preview. And then we'll be back that Sunday. I'll be back in town for sure to do the review on that. So stay tuned to all our stuff, all our social media. If anything breaks on the Ocon development, we will be sure to bring it to you between now and then. If any other driver news breaks, it's just because there's a lull doesn't mean there's not going to be stuff happening. We will bring that to you as well. So again, take care. Happy Memorial Day or Bank Holiday if you're in the UK. I hope you all enjoyed it and enjoyed the weekend as a whole. And as always, may all your laps be fast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Outlap F1 podcast. If you like what you heard, click that subscribe button and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect with us outside of the show, check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at OutlapF1 Podcast, or email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com. As always, thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one.